Our final presenter today is the recipient of the OFAH Davison Ankney Sandi Johnson Award for Avian Ecology. Please welcome, for the second straight year, Matt Palumbo.
Well, thank you all. My name is Matt Palumbo. I'm a PhD student with Scott Petrie and Long Point Waterfowl at the University of Western Ontario. A little bit about myself, originally from outside of Buffalo, New York. Spent my youth there chasing ducks, deer, and turkey in Western New York. Did my undergrad at Environmental Science and Forestry School in Syracuse. Then went to Mississippi State, where I studied wild turkey gobbling chronology. And then in 2013, came to Long Point Waterfowl to study mallard habitat use and survival at Lake St. Clair, which is what I'll be talking about here today. So to start off with the project and the background, I first want to talk about the importance of Lake St. Clair. So Lake St. Clair is one of the most important staging areas for waterfowl within the Great Lakes. Now, it's not only important locally to the waterfowl and hunters that are there, but it has a very international importance and continent-wide importance. This is evident in the banding data. So if you look at the figure on the left, you can see these are banding locations of mallards recovered near Lake St. Clair, so essentially the birds that were shot there, where they were banded, where they're coming from. And then on the right is a figure of recovery locations of mallards banded near Lake St. Clair. And so these are birds that were banded at Lake St. Clair and where they were shot. So you can see that Lake St. Clair is a crossroads for the Atlantic and Mississippi flyways. There's a variety of other sources that support this between work that Scott has done, especially with some of the satellite tracking on tundra swans and scaup as well, or if you looked at banding data from other waterfowl species as well. So the area is extremely important for staging in the lower Great Lakes. So not only is it extremely important, it's also one of the most threatened habitats within the Great Lakes as well. So this figure here shows wetland loss in Ontario. And if you can see down in the left-hand corner where Lake St. Clair is at, that there's anywhere from 90 to 95% of wetland loss in southwestern Ontario. This is primarily due to conversion to agriculture, but there's a variety of other stressors that waterfowl experience while they're there, from invasive species, population growth, increasing industrial development as well. So not only is it very important, it's also a very threatened landscape. The remaining wetland habitat that is there is primarily conserved through either hunt clubs or federally protected national wildlife areas, or the coastal marshes of the lake itself, that the marshes that go out into the lake itself. So from this picture, you can see that agricultural landscape that goes pretty much right up to the lake's edge, other than where this hunt club has diked off this marsh area here, and then also the coastal marshes that go out into the lake itself. So for this landscape, I have a variety of research questions that I'm interested in. One is, how are waterfowl navigating this landscape? So essentially, what habitat types are they selecting for or using more than other habitat types? When are they using them? So if there's differences from daytime use versus nighttime use. And also, since there's a variety of different mortality risks on this landscape, how are these birds using these different habitat types in relationship to perceived risk that's involved there? So once I figure out how they're using different, or what different habitats they're using, I want to understand how this use relates to their survival, whether or not they live or die. Additionally, trying to understand how this use relates to how long they stay within the area, so when they're leaving in relation to how they're using the landscape there. But while they are there, I have a few questions as well. One is to try and understand if there's differences in habitat use from different times of the year that they're there. So if they're using different habitats at the beginning of the season versus the end of the season, potentially switching different habitat use strategies. Also look at differences in movement across these different habitat types, if they're willing to move different distances at different times of the year. Also, since it's a very dynamic landscape, there's a variety of different spatial refuges there, so I want to understand how their use of these refuges influences their survival as well. So the project itself, We had our first full field season last year, where in August and September we banded waterfowl on the eastern shore of Lake St. Clair. And through our banding efforts with help from the Canadian Wildlife Service, local area managers, Long Point Waterfowl, staff and volunteers, we banded nearly 1,000 waterfowl, primarily mallards, at this location here during August and September. Of those 1,000 waterfowl, I selected 20 adult female mallards to be equipped with GPS transmitters. So the transmitters are attached with a Teflon harness, and they essentially just ride like a backpack on the back of the duck. Now, being that it's a GPS technology, anywhere that the duck travels, I can get a GPS location on it, and essentially it relays it. In real short, it actually sends almost a text message to a cell tower. The cell tower then pings it to a server, and I can access the information from a website. So some folks might be wondering why adult female mallards. Some previous research that looked at the banding data suggests that the Great Lakes population of mallards is actually separate from the mid-continent population of mallards, or mallards from the prairies. And with this, they use different habitat types, are under different environmental constraints, and have different population drivers. And of those population drivers, they determined that non-breeding season survival of the adult females is most influential to population growth. So I want to understand how they're using this habitat, how that habitat is related to their non-breeding season survival during autumn and winter. So some expected results. Our first group of GPS locations shown here for the early season of one mallard gives us habitat use information of directly nighttime use, daytime use, and very accurate location information as well. Additionally, for survival information, we can collect birds that are reported from hunters that contact me directly, then from the banding data itself, and then also, since they have GPS transmitters on them with VHF transmitters attached to those, I can locate these birds if they die from other causes other than hunter mortalities. Additionally, to try to understand their migration chronology, or when they're leaving the area, to relate that to habitats that they're using within the area. So this figure here shows the ending location of all 20 GPS marked birds at January 11th after the season. So with that, the importance to OFAH is that this information will give us an understanding of how these birds are navigating a very dynamic and threatened landscape, but is also a very critical landscape for their throughout their entire lifetime. So this information will give us information on influences of survival, migration, and also provide area managers with an idea of how these birds are using the area, and also for future conservation if the Great Lakes population of mallards is deemed to be managed differently than from mid-continent populations of mallards. So with that, I'd like to thank the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, yourselves, Long Point Waterfowl, my supervisor Scott Petrie, and a variety of these other funding sources and support sources that are here. Thanks.
So as many people know in this room, Dr. Dave Ankney was an OFAH past president and extremely influential in natural resource management here in Ontario. So the OFAH established this award in honor of his commitment to the OFAH and to avian ecology research. And so on behalf of the OFAH, I'm happy to present this award to Matt Palumbo for the second straight year. Gotta pretend like we like each other.